Barrister Eze Eluche will be giving us his own insight into what we'll be discussing this evening. It is vital that we try to have a logical comprehension of the myriad of challenges Nigeria is currently facing and have an objective view of some of these issues. Barrister Eze Eluche, good evening. Thank you for joining us today. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm very fine. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to share my views with your audience.
Yes, thank you so much, Barrister Eze Eluche. I'm actually quite delighted having you right here with us in the studio. Barrister Eze Eluche, so let's start off with what transpired very recently, which has got a lot of Nigerians talking and speaking, is concerning the Electoral Act, the Clause 60 amendment. Well, we've been hearing about electoral reform, electoral review. A couple of Nigerians feel that the Senate is deliberately stalling in that regard. Now, we've been seeing responses on social media after what the Agotulakwadio Senate disclosed 2 days ago. And a couple of persons are now telling the opposition, please do not even bother having to be on the ballot. They have pre-planned everything. Everything has been sorted out for the APC. But Barrister Eze Eluche, can you help us reclarify? Senate Minority Leader Eyinaya Baribe has tried to explain that no, they did not actually change anything. They maintained it. They only say that it is INEC chair or INEC that will determine how election results will be transmitted. For example, it will not be transmitted live per se, but there will be an e-transmission. Nothing has changed. Others are arguing that the essence of ensuring that it is within the jurisdiction of INEC is that some local governments and some communities may not have network. And so in that regard, they may not be able to upload the results. How do you now rely on whatever result is uploaded on that platform, especially if it is delayed? INEC is stating, or what the Senate is telling us, is that the ARA portal is just to view. It's not a major determinant as to how the elections proceed or to determine transparently how election results will be collated. What's your take on that, Barrister Eze Eluche?
Well, the reality is that when we keep quiet over small crimes or little crimes, it begins to balloon into a norm, into a pattern, becomes like part of the national policy. This forgery or alteration of decisions of National Assembly started with the Tax Act, when it was revealed that what Mr. Tinubu signed was different from what was approved by the National Assembly. Yeah. Nigerians did not follow it up with the seriousness it deserves, because there you see crimes being committed by even at the highest levels of government. We played over it. Now the Nigerians are being threatened with a tax law that will start by March 1st or whatever, an unlawful, illegal, unconstitutional tax law. So when the issue of the Electoral Act, the alterations of whether it will be transmitted or transferred came up, and Abaribe and some of his fellow senators said what they approved was transmission,
yeah,
and not transfer, because these are just words that can be played. Anyone you use can still be played around with by whosoever is in charge of INEC. So my view on this is this: Nigerians must continue to be vigilant. Those who are thinking that we will, because of this issue, allow them to ride us over the elections, no, perhaps that is what they intend to. But Nigerians must continue to remain vigilant, because whether you transform or transfer or transmit, people should understand that if what was tabulated, what was calculated at their words is not what gets transferred, transformed, transmitted to the collation center, then they must not accept such robbery. They simply must not accept such robbery. Those who think that it is only 4 years, 4 years and how many deaths? So, I mean, what is going on in the National Assembly, in the Senate now with regards to the Electoral Act will continue, because we did not put a stop to it when it happened with the Electoral Act, but we still have opportunities to determine, to say, no, these people are there for Nigerians. It's not for Mr. Akpabio or Mr. Bola Tinubu. They are supposed to be representing Nigerians. So Nigerians should begin to take up their destiny in their own hands and not expect some miracle angels to fall from anywhere to change the algorithms of what is going on. Because left to these characters, they have already declared somebody to be president by the year 2027. They won't even bother to have elections. But Nigerians must tell them that this is our country. It also belongs to us. It does not belong to a few people in the National Assembly or in the Aso Rock. It belongs to every Nigerian. And we have equal stakes in ensuring that the right things are done at the right time.
All right, Barrister Eze Eluche, I'm sure you saw where the National Security Advisor, that is Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, warning violent actors against vote buying ahead of the elections. And he issued a stern warning to political actors with violent tendencies and vote buying, saying they will be identified and sanctioned before, during, and after the upcoming Federal Capital Area Council election and the by-elections in Rivers and Kano states. That warning was given earlier today by the NSA during the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, and the meeting was organized by INEC in Abuja while the country is preparing for the February 21 polls, that is in the FCT Council elections. Now, Barrister Eze Eluche, here is the thing. There was a recent killing in Kayama Woro community in Kwara State. We thought we would have heard the NSA giving advice. The NSA is giving an advice, or in fact, ever since the incident, we've not heard the NSA make any statement to condemn the killings that recently just transpired. We've not heard any statement, however, of whatsoever from the top echelon as to the recent killings in Kwara State. But the NSA is advising against vote buying and all the political shenanigans upcoming. What would you consider as a priority of the NSA and the secret agents, especially for the fact that these agents came into the community in Kwara few months, like 5 months before this attack, to warn that they were coming to indoctrinate them with a radical system of ideology, religious ideology? How would you react to this?
Well, the comments of Nasir Nuhu Ibadu relating to the elections about those who are vote buying, those who are engaging in violence, is just rabble rousing. I mean, he shouldn't be taken seriously. The reason being this: less than 2 years ago, there were elections. There are people who did vote buying. There are people who committed electoral crimes, violence, robbery, and everything. All those people are walking about freely. Little or no prosecutions has taken place. And this same character, Nuhu Ibadu, has been the NSA security advisor for that long, and he's not done anything to prosecute. The best way to deter people from committing crimes is to prosecute and punish those who did the same crimes before them. What Mr. Nuhu Ibadu is just trying to do in this instance is to scare the opposition parties, to rouse them into being scared not to even bother about coming to elections or participating in the elections. He knows who he's talking to. It's not the members of the ruling party who stole and robbed their way into office. Mr. President himself, Bola Tinubu, was saying election is you steal, you grab, and you run with it. In the next coming elections. No, I mean, nobody takes this kind of comments serious. Nuhu Ibadu basically is a politician, and he's speaking in this instance as an APC card-carrying member. With regards to his silence to the issues that has happened in Kwara and several other security breaches across the country, it's rather sad. With what is going on in Nigeria, we keep on wondering, do we have a police force? Do we have a DSS, Department of State Security? What is the National Security Advisor being paid a humongous salary for? What is even the military doing? Because if some people can go and kill over 170 Nigerians for over 10 hours, because from the time the killing started till when the first military men arrived was more than 10 hours. If it can happen to a community in Kwara State, who says it cannot happen to my community in Imo State, or to the communities in Lagos or other communities? So the NSA has totally lost focus of what should be his duties. His duty is to advise on security issues. And with this kind of insecurity breaking loose every now and then, and he has the guts to come and talk about vote buying and all that stuff, I beg, it's sad. It's sad that we have this kind of low quality characters leading our very sensitive agencies. It's a shame, actually.
All right, Barrister Eze Eluche, with what happened recently in Kwara, the social media space has been agog with several angles of the conversation. Some persons are sensationalizing what happened. There are also ethnic colorations and religious colorations to what happened. But the general purview is the apathy attached to what happened. So you see a section of persons saying, Well, since they are not from a particular region, it is their business. Or if it's Muslims or Fulanis or whatever, they're brothers. Or if it's a particular act of Kwara State that is of the southwest, then it doesn't concern them. And the reaction of sympathy, of crying out, just a few persons are objective and have expressed a form of sympathy. How do we categorize the political space now with recent happenings where Nigerians actually don't even care? At this point in time, everything is looked at from a prism of religious or ethnic, colorations. The politics seems to be more frazzled and disoriented and disconnected. What happened? How did it deteriorate to this point that now every day killings are no longer viewed with sympathy? It's now looked at what section did it happen. If it didn't happen in my region, in my location, it's none of my business. How did it come to this point? Would you blame the politicians for this, or Nigerians have just gone the extra mile in this aspect of looking at issues at the polity?
Well, thank you very much. From the very onset of this regime, the Bola Tinubu regime, right from the time it announced itself as winners of the presidential elections, the party, Mr. President and his cohorts have focused on the next election. They totally abandoned governance. All they have been interested in is how do you tax Nigerians more, how do you exploit Nigerians more, how do you drain more blood from Nigerians, and not governance. Insecurity, poor economy, poor education, downfall in all facets of development has been the order of the day in Nigeria. So this is what has now crystallized into this general apathy by Nigerians. They are now, everybody's like thinking of himself, him or herself, him or her own village or basic neighborhood. And this is actually what they do to cage us in a cul-de-sac and then continue to rule us with vengeance. Because nowadays nobody's even bothered. Somebody on Rivers will say, no, this is a Kwara problem. When the same thing happens in Rivers or in Plateau, the man in Kano or Lagos will say, no, it's their own problem until it hits us. But we're all Nigerians. Now, whether those who died in Kwara are Christians or Muslims, the basic fact is that they are human beings who have been failed by their state. Their country has failed them. Their police, their military, their security agencies have failed those people, just like they have failed all Nigerians. Because the kidnappings, the killings happens everywhere. No part of the country is safe. So those who think that because it's happened in Kwara State, then they can remain distant from it. No, that is not how it is. We must empathize with them. We must empathize with those who mourn and maybe have joy with those who have joy. But there has been so much money in this country for damn too long. And rather than even address it, all we will hear from Mr. President is I want to use the word silly, but a very odd condolence message from either Bayo or Ononuga, one of those characters, that Mr. President condoles with the people, and he has ordered the military to go where? To go where, for goodness sake? Because they will go to that Kwara State, the next day it will happen in Niger or Benue or Plateau or some other place. Who goes there again? It's a total failure of intelligence, total failure of governance. And Nigerians should realize that one way out of this mess is to ensure that these characters who stole themselves into power in 2023 are not allowed to stay a day beyond when they should leave by 2027. That way we can now start afresh and rebuild our great nation. But with these characters in office, it's almost a hopeless situation for Nigerians.
Barrister, as of late 2025 and early this year, today is February 6, 2026, so we're still in the early part of the year 2026. The president and his administration, they have faced significant criticism from political opponents and Nigerians alike, security experts, public commentators just like you, with several alleging that his administration lacks the political will or capacity to handle the country's worsening security issues. They frequently cited factors regarding the administration's approach to handling the insecurity in the country. They have alleged the lack of political will. They have alleged the fact that despite several talks talks like you just highlighted from Bayo Onanaga and other cabinet spokespersons, the insecurity persists. There's also the fact that the administration is prioritizing politics over security. There are concerns over command and control within the Nigerian security echelon. That's the security outfit, which is our Navy, Police, Army, Air Force, and the likes. And the fact that their response to these incidents lacks any form of sympathy. It's apathetical with how they react to these issues. Now, the administration of the day said that they have applied and implemented technological investment to the security, that is the armed forces, to help them navigate and have to fight these guys. They've also talked about the alteration, that is the change in security appointments. You know what happened last year where the Minister of Defense emerged from, and then the fact that they have been going with ongoing operations to counter the activities of these guys. But it feels like the negative aspect overwhelms or overshadows whatever effort the government of the day is putting into it. How would you describe this, sir?
Well, the reality is that you cannot be better than what you can achieve, your maximum. I mean, those are the helm of affairs, right from the very highest echelons of governance, Mr. Bola Tinubu himself. And these are characters who have profited immensely from Nigerian policy without contributing a dime to development issues. We look at his governance of Lagos State. He enriched himself beyond proportions, beyond the reasonable sense of profiteering. So he's doing the same thing in Nigeria. I mean, all his policies are geared towards self-aggrandizement and self-profiting for himself and his corporates. And in that, guys, you leave governance, you leave the development, you leave the economy, you leave the education sector. That is what has happened to Nigeria. So Mr. President cannot say he's done anything much. All he's done is to change service chiefs, change guards, and what of the basics? What of the troop morale? Those troops at the forefront. What has happened to them? When you do treatment, when you do reintegration and have shown for Boko Haram terrorists, and you even offer them more than what the soldiers are getting, what kind of sense or what kind of message are you passing to the troops? The police people who are supposed to be the first line of security, look at how they live in the barracks. I mean, he has virtually done nothing for the grassroots sector of the security agencies. All he's done is he has overpampered the generals, giving them millions of naira upon retirement. But those who do the nitty-gritty of the security work, what have you done for them? Absolutely or near nothing. So that is what this government has not planned out any approach to address insecurity, to address any of our developmental challenges. All it has done since inception has been how do I extract more from Nigerians. So with that kind of governance, that kind of government in place, that kind of regime, what do you expect from these people? You can't expect anything positive from them. And Nigerians should channel this outrage, channel the angst towards ensuring that they do not stay a day longer than necessary, despite all their manipulations, despite all their efforts. Because a continuation of these characters in office will lead to the ruination, the doom of most Nigerians. So we can't allow that to happen. Thank you very much.
All right, Barrister Eze Uche, in that regard, let's look at a couple of actors that have made comments ever since we began to experience a consistent sporadic increase in insecurity. For example, the presidential candidate of the SDP has actually said that the president, aside from lacking the political will, is weak to handle insecurity and that he's enabling it. Do you think that is the case? Because the president has expressed anger over the persistent killings. He has called all the security agencies for a closed door meeting to ask them what is going on and in what way they need assistance to handle this, because it has actually become quite embarrassing for the All Progressives Congress with the seemingly increasing spate of insecurity from the previous administration of Muhammadu Buhari. There were expectations that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration would be different in regards to insecurity, but it feels like there's a deterioration, there's a decline, or it's got worse. So if the president has put efforts to provide what is needed for the security agents to handle this. Who are those sabotaging these efforts? We have heard of talks that these agents in government leak out secret and strategic information to the terrorists. We've also heard of informants within the ranks of the security agents to the terrorists. How will the military handle this? And is the president fair enough or giving them a deadline to ensure that these individuals are decimated?
Now, when you have for even an entity like the Nigerian police force, you retain somebody who ordinarily should have retired some over a year ago as the president of police. But do the same thing for some of these agencies. You bring in retired old hands who perhaps are even bereft of what to do to address these issues. How can you make progress? Like from the onset, you said you had mentioned that information technology using mere drones can go a long way to address these issues. But when you rather than buying drones for the security agencies, you prefer to buy $500 million vehicles, jeeps, bulletproof jeeps for the service chiefs. What is the priority? Is it that the security of a single officer is more than the security of the entire Nigerian nation? So when you look at the focus of this administration, just to pamper the ego and the cushion a few at the expense of the Nigerian nation, how can there be progress? So the reality is this: I do not think that Mr. President has actually even wants to address the security issue, because if they address the security issue and everywhere is secured, I mean they will become insecure themselves. This is a government that thrives in insecurity. They will give out billions under the guise of tackling insecurity, and at the end of the day, this money goes down the drains because it is not well channeled. It is not well gifted. You just give out these monies to your cronies, and then the soldiers at the forefront are left without the basic weapons. So Mr. President and his regime did not set out for governance. They set out to capture power for the gains and profits they will get. So, and not to address the pains of Nigerians. That is why, for instance, every sector of governance of the society, is it the health, is it education, is it security, is it, you name it, economy, everything has virtually collapsed. The only thing that is increasing is the salaries and emoluments of government officials. So that is what this government set out for, and that is what they are achieving. They said they will increase the tax net and weaken the purchasing power of the naira and deepen poverty. That's what they've achieved. So what else do you expect from this regime? But it's now left to Nigerians. If you want to make hay, if you want to move forward at all costs, the current regime of Mr. Bola Tinubu must not be allowed a day longer than necessary, which is not more than 2027, when he should be kicked out of office, so that somebody else can come in and into the saddle and help to move Nigeria forward.
Barrister Eze Luche, so you know what happened about late last year concerning the failed coup plots, where about 40 persons were disclosed to have been involved. There was meant to be a brutal killing of the president, the vice president, the minister of defense, the NSA, and the Senate president. There were core persons that were targeted, even the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Now the question is this. In a recent interview, Christopher Musa, the Minister of Defense, said that he was also part of the coup. Not part of the coup, he was meant to be, decimated by these guys. That was the major plan, when this whole thing was being put together. But here is the thing that a lot of persons are considering, whereby if that had happened, it would have caused an economic genocide. One thing that came to the mind was, has the government learned from this supposed failed coup plot? Had it actually taken place, what it would have meant for this government? Something that has not happened in a long time. This kind of thing we heard occurred during the military regime. In a civilian dispensation or in a democratic setting, ever since the time of Olusegun Obasanjo, we've never heard of something like this being planned against a current sitting president. And they're asking questions to the administration that, did they learn a lesson out of this to tell you how bad things had gotten, that certain elements had planned to wipe out the top echelons and economic decision makers of this nation? The exploitation by discourse Nigerians also feel that the economic genocide is sponsored by those in government and that there is an apathy towards their plight. There's the fact that there is lack of jobs, high cost of food, and then the insecurity. But however, in as much as the solution is not a military coup, has this government learned a lesson from what just exposed, from what was just exposed late last year?
Thank you very much. Let us make it one thing clear. The military coups will not solve the problems, and Nigerians should not at this stage be going and thinking of even having a coup. What we should actually rather be moving for is civilian protests. Civilian protest against evil rules, against evil regime, a groundswell of protest, because that protest is guaranteed by a constitution. You can protest against bad governance. So Nigerians sufficiently can mobilize themselves and protest against evil, but not a military coup. Because these military guys, we have seen through them. They will come in making all sorts of promises that our hospitals are now near consulting clinics and blah, blah, blah. And then when they come in, they get worse. We had Mr. Who is this? Buhari and Idiagwa, they came and said their own. Babangida came and said his own, and they left the polity worse off. So we don't even want military regime. The people will take care of these issues by themselves and address it. So the Nigerian population has to rise up and ensure that they do what is needed, what other societies do. Now, with regards to whether this government has learned anything from it, I doubt it. Because one thing that is normal with these characters who think they know it all, or that they have all the power, they have the police, the army, everything. They think they are infallible. So the regime has gotten into its own head that nothing can change it, that they can do whatever they want to do and nobody will question it, that they can bring in a forged tax act and implement it, that they can manipulate the electoral act and do whatever. So they have become like immune to reality. So it is left to Nigerians to bring them down and let them face reality so that they can realize that the people, power still lies with the people and not with any government. Like even when you calculate all they have, the soldiers, the policemen, the Navy, everything, they are not up to 5% of the population. So when Nigerians galvanize themselves and say enough is enough, we'll be able to remove this evil that is on our neck, that is trying to strangulate Nigerians. But certainly not via military coup. There is what is normally known as the doctrine of necessity. If it gets too bad that they must be removed before the May 2027, then so shall it be. But certainly not by a coup. It will protest and achieve gains by protest. Thank you.
Now, just today in Abuja, based on the INEC electoral reform bill, there was a small gathering, there was a protest in Abuja close to the National Assembly. And because of that, we're beginning to see phone numbers of House of Rep members and senators representing several constituencies, and they're asking Nigerians, this is the number of your House of Rep members. If you're joining us right now on YouTube, we're very soon going to post the faces of the senators of each of the zones, members of the Senate Conference Committee. We're going to post their pictures, and then also you're going to see their phone numbers as their contact details. The plan is for Nigerians to call the senators and compel them to sit in concerning the harmonization bills. They are saying they would no longer allow what happened in 2023 to happen again in 2027. But Barrister Eze Eluche, a couple of persons feel that this protest may not actually do anything, and even the contact details of the senators or House of Rep members may not do anything. They may have several numbers. You may call and call and call. It may not be picked. It may not even be the senators. It may be their aides or secretaries or spokespersons. But do you think Nigerians are actually ready to do what you just recommended?
Yes, you see, I think when a human being is pushed to the wall and there's no place to fall back again, cannot go back to the wall, they are forced to react. So until Nigerians feel they've been pushed to that wall, they may not be able to react in the appropriate way they should react. But I think whatever form of protest, whatever form of reaching out to the National Assembly members should be encouraged, because ideally these members of the National Assembly should maintain constituency offices. They should maintain channels of communication with the population. so that they can be reached at any time. That is the essence of a democracy. It is not only a democracy if you are members of House of Reps or the Senate, you can't reach them, you can't call them. So they should ordinarily by themselves have made their numbers, their email addresses available to the population. So if they've not done that and it's only being made public now, then that is good for our democracy. But then they should hearken and they should understand the feeling of the people. They should gauge the feeling of the masses and know that their power derives from the people. If you recollect, before when the Mr. President announced that he had cancelled policemen for every other person except a few government operatives, the Senate President Akpabio had told the Mr. President that most of his members of the National Assembly will not be able to go to their various constituencies without escorts. Now that tells you that in themselves, they know that what they are doing in Abuja is not in tune with the desires of the population. So at any instance or in any way possible, Nigerians must find a means, a mechanism to let their members of the National Assembly and the State Assembly understand their feelings on virtually every issue. So yes, it's good to let them know the numbers of these members of the National Assembly and reach out to them. Of course, in reaching out to them, you don't have to be abusive. You don't have to call, you just have to say, my honorable senator, my honorable member of the House, this is our views on this. And once that sinks in, once they begin to obey the voice of the people, then they won't have any problems. But we must make sure that they have problems if they don't want to listen to the voice of the people. They must listen to the voice of the people. That's why they are members of the House. That's why they are senators.
Barrister Eze from Sokoto and Kebbi states, Lakurawa has expanded southeast into Niger State Borogo axis, which borders northern Benin. The lack of state presence in this area is what enabled the group to establish parallel governance structures. They appointed local imams, they levied taxes and enforced extreme religious practices on villages. The scene in that particular axis is that there is no state presence. State presence is lacking mostly in those areas, and because of that, this terrorist group stepped in. They stepped in to serve as a parallel government. They decided activities within those communities, the kind of religion they practice. They gave them a schedule of their movement. They imposed taxes and levies. Why is there a lack of state presence when we have governors of those states?
Well, the reality is this. Nigeria is a fraud. It's often referred to as a crime scene. Every part of Nigeria is a part of a local government area. And we have 774 local government areas in Nigeria. As of today, none of these local government areas takes home less than 300 million every month. 300 million naira every month. But in most of these local government areas, when you get to the local government areas, there is absolutely no government presence. Now, with 300 million, you can actually revolutionize most of our grassroots communities. But because of the graph, because of the monumental heist going on, stealing at the highest level, when the governors in the state capitals pocket almost the entirety of the funds of local government areas, makes it impossible for even any drop of government presence to be felt in these local government areas. That is why terrorist groups like this group you mentioned, Boko Haram, can dominate local government areas for years and nothing happens. Most of these local government areas have no police presence. In fact, in Imo State, there are up to 4 local government areas where there are no single police post, no police station in Imo State, as urban as it is. When you talk about places like Niger and Borno and all that areas. Now you ask yourself, if there is no local government, no police station in an entire local government area, then how is it possible to maintain governance and rule of law in those areas? And this is what is the cause of the problem in Nigeria. Monumental graft at the center. Failure of the government to allow the local governments to breathe. And if they don't breathe, the villages won't breathe. So most of the local government chairmen you have in the country remain in the state capitals. They collect their funds in the state capitals and don't even bother to go to the local government areas. And that only allows these rascal entities like the terrorist groups to take over and man these local government areas. That is why a killing, monumental mass massacre of over 170 Nigerians can take place in Kwara State, and for more than 10 hours, we are not able to send even one policeman to that area. Meanwhile, 10 hours is enough to move troops from Nigeria to UK.
Yeah.
But we could not send policemen to a community in Kwara State. And anybody thinks we are safe in this country. Come on. I mean, one of the other issues is this. Our constitution says we can only have a federal police force with somebody in Abuja heading the entire police force for the whole country. Now, if there were village police forces, armed police forces in the villages, in the local government areas, in the communities, I assure you, no terrorist group will come in anyhow and begin to massacre. Because even if as a village police force, you have 2 or 3 AK-47s, anybody thinking of storming your village will think twice, because he doesn't know where those 3 or 4 guns are. And even the terrorist wants to go back home alive.
Hello?
But there's nobody that has guns there. The police is there in Abuja with the IG seated comfortably in the Kamsalam building, enjoying himself, claiming to be policing the whole country when he's only policing Mr. President and his cohorts. So the problem is multifaceted. Lack of governance in the local government areas because the governors are stealing the entire funds for the local government areas, and the constitutional provision which makes it compulsory that we only have one police force in Nigeria, rather than having police forces in the villages, in the towns, in the schools, in the communities, everywhere. The school I went to in the US has a police force. Universities in the US have police forces, and they are armed. So why is it that we have only one Nigerian police force? And this is not working. It's not working, and they refuse to still change it. Before the next 1 week, we will hear another mass massacre somewhere in Nigeria. And then thereafter, Mr. President will send out his condolence message, how he wishes that they didn't die, and he will order troops to go there, and nothing will happen. Absolutely nothing will happen. Before then, he will travel to Turkey or some other place, and that will be the end of the story.
Barrister Ezeuruche, please just kindly stay with us. We're going to be taking a very short break.